Hi everyone, Aaron from Ictect. I'm here with our president, Pradeep Jain. He's also the owner of the company. And we've had various questions come in through the internet, specifically about XML and the book publishing industry. So he's here to talk to me and to talk to you about what it is and how it affects the book publishing industry. Pradeep, thanks for being here. So Pradeep, can you talk a little bit about the state of XML in the book publishing industry?
Sure. So the state of XML in book publishing, I would say, is in a state of disarray. That's my 30,000 feet view.
Okay.
Now, that's because I would say book publishing has failed XML. There's a couple of interesting articles on the web as well, but that's kind of the high level view.
Now, why is that? That's a pretty strong statement.
Yes. Well, you'll see a number of interesting situations. So first of all, there's a number of large book publishers that have recently now made the move or making the move away from XML. They are saying going to, from XML to HTML5 or EPUB only. The other thing you would see is that there is not a single standard for book publishing in a single XML standard. So the publishers are trying to either define their own or don't know what to do. This is actually in sharp contrast with something like journals or technical manuals. As you know, journals is all much more on the JATS standard.
Sure.
And the technical publishing is much more on the data side. Now, the third point I would make is that the small publishers really don't see much value in XML and they can't justify the expense.
Yeah. Okay.
And finally, quite important, is the fact that the XML is really confined to a very small part of production, and the authors, the subject matter experts, the editors are really kind of afraid to touch XML, to be close to XML. So that's the state of history.
XML has been around in book publishing for many years. So why do you think that publishers haven't gotten it right?
Okay, so most book publishers who are simply who are doing XML, they're simply pushing it to their offshore service provider.
Okay.
So what happens is XML actually happens at the end of the process, or after the end of PDF. But they would claim, or they would think, that they are still doing what is called XML first. Might come to believe that this is a single source of truth, that everything is coming from the XML, and they get very surprised when they find out that that's not the case.
Now, wait a minute here, because I can name a lot of XML programs that are integrated in the workflow that can do XML in any way, shape, or form that you can imagine.
So all of the programs are, I would say 99+% of those programs are really geared to the technically inclined audience. Okay, so you have InDesign and you have Oxygen, you have a lot of the XML editors, but that's all for the technical users.
All right. So let's step back a little bit. So what can XML really do for a book publisher then?
So we could take let's say at 3 different levels. If you're doing XML, if you're a book publisher and you're doing XML, if you're doing it minimally right, it's really got to improve your book publishing process. It has to save time, it has to reduce cost, and it has to give you more value for your content. From a publishing process standpoint, if you're using XML properly, then your publishing process really should be much more like an expressway, as opposed to a bullock cart.
Okay.
If you're at the second level and you're doing better than that, then nobody in the organization should be afraid of XML. So your authors, your editors, your salespeople should all be able to touch and feel XML.
Okay, well.
And then the third level is if you're doing a really good job, then you should really be able to say that XML is really helping me advance my organization's mission. That whatever that is, advancing knowledge in your defined community, and XML is helping you maximize the value of your content.
Well, so you kind of laid out the broad scope. I mean, obviously, you're looking for greater efficiency and greater reuse of your content. So it's no secret that Ictect's in the XML space.
Yeah.
But specifically, what can Ictect do for book publishers?
So for most book publishers and for most service providers, this is probably a question of production. How can you use XML for production? But for us, it's really a question of the architecture. So how can you get to, let's say level 1 architecture first, which is efficiency and cost savings.
Okay.
Level 2 is XML in the organization, and not XML per se, but the benefits of XML. And then number 3 is the maximizing the value of your content using XML.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm following you on all 3 of those points, but this sounds like a pretty long-term commitment.
It doesn't need to be a long-term commitment. I mean, it would be good to have a roadmap. If you're a publisher, what's you're planning on the content, and I understand that there's a lot changing on the content side, but you could take small steps. As I said, you could take the first step and just sort of stay at that for a long period of time.
That makes sense to me. So I guess in the back of my mind, though, I hear people saying, well, there's the benefits of XML, and then there's the burden of XML. Right. So talk about that a little bit.
So traditionally, XML is viewed as a burden in most organizations. Oh, it's the tagging, the coding stuff. Let's push it to the service provider, right? People don't want to look at it, right? What's the benefit? I don't want my authors touching XML because it's hard enough to focus on the subject. But the benefit of XML is, if you think about the process of your author-editor communication, and there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of time that's spent. Yeah, the author submitted something which keeps going back because the abstract is not right size, because the title's not there, because this or that. But you can actually give them a self-check type of feature, which adds the XML, but they don't really need to know about it. Think about copy editing. If you add XML in the copy editing stage, you can actually improve, streamline, and more automate the copy editing process. So a lot of those benefits.
All right. Well, okay. So let's take just a second and talk a little bit about the kind of underlying structure of XML, the DTD or schema.
Yeah.
What should a book publisher use?
So if you are a book publisher and concerned about production, I think the 2 choices, and those are both nothing more than a starting point. So you have DocBook as one, which has been around for many years, and then you have the new one, which is called the Bits, which is the companion of JAX. So book interchange tag suite. Okay. Both of those are good starting point. Keep in mind that you would need to do a certain level of customization. Now, this is just for production. If you really want to go more than that, you want to maximize the value of your content, those 2 are still, I would say, good starting point. Okay. But then perhaps the degree of customization may be much more than just for production.
So now we're starting to get into an area because of the complexities and always adjusting and changing your schema DTD. So the new trend in book publishing now is we're going to ebook or EPUB in HTML5. Right. That's kind of the new workflow. Right. You want to talk about that?
So yes, there's a few publishers that have actually announced that they are moving to HTML5 workflow, and our take on that is that an HTML5 workflow, may be a good solution for if your time horizon is 2-3 years. If you really are in this for the long haul, you ought to look at XML.
Okay. Okay. So that being said, there's obviously a lot of book publishers that have been doing XML for a number of years, but we're seeing a greater disillusionment, I guess you could say, with that, and they're either pursuing HTML5 again or a new type of XML. Right. What do you say about that?
So it's interesting. You'd see a scenario where someone would get disillusioned with what's happening in their in the publishing process, and then they switch from one XML to another XML, or things like that. But in our view, that's really not solving the problem. The fundamental issue that you as a book publisher has to deal with is how can you make XML more friendly. So you can actually make XML more friendly pretty much regardless of the DTD or the schema that you're using.
Okay.
But what we do and what we see as a critical issue is making this XML more friendly.
Oh, okay. What's this friendly XML? I mean, can we have some concrete examples? Are you just talking about better tags or what?
Well, I'll show you a couple of examples. So first of all, this is not just a user-friendly software. One of the things I'll show you. Typically, XML looks like this. So you can see that you've got a lot of tags, you've got attributes, you've got stuff.
Sure, this is a mess.
And the moment people see it, they're like, well, I'm not going to deal with it.
That's what I said.
Right. Let's go to the Word document, and can actually show XML in what it looks like in the Word document. So you can actually see, for example, the things are, the styles are there. So if you look at it, you place your cursor somewhere in there.
Sure. So the address block.
So see, for example, here you can see the XML is there.
Okay.
The publisher, the street, the address.
Yeah, this is plain English. I even understand this.
Most people who are working are familiar with styles, regardless of whatever editor that they're working here. But you can actually see things that make sense to you as an author or as an editor. Are you not familiar with who's the book published by? Those types of things. So you can more easily interact with them.
So there's an easy applied logic there.
That's right.
For the non-technical, I guess.
The tags that make sense, content that you can review, where you can do track changes, you can send it, back and forth. That's one aspect of friendly XML.
Okay. So now just a minute here, because we've been looking at our user-friendly XML, and I'm noticing all of a sudden that this is the full Microsoft Word tags. And so are you telling me that this isn't a 4-letter word or 4-letter product?
Well, there's a lot of misconception about Microsoft Word and XML. So much so that it's sometimes I think that it's really going to take a miracle to change that. But I've been in this space for a while. I actually did a patent on Word and XML. And here I would just say a few facts. So number one is that Microsoft Word is still the most popular editor when it comes to book publishing. 95% plus of your books are coming in Microsoft Word.
So they originate there.
Right, they originate there.
Okay. All right.
Now, secondly, most people don't actually know that Microsoft has added these tags, which we call content controls, in Word.
Yeah,
so they still think that what you're going to get is that 4-letter stuff.
The first
from the
picture we saw,
HTML type of thing. That's not the case. And then third is, of course, we have our plugin here.
Sure, it fits right at the top of your
Well,
this is a little surprising. I'm sure it'll be surprising to some people. But give me a little bit of an example now, because now we're talking about a change in workflow. And most people I hear, they say, well, we've got a template in Word, and we try to ignore that or get away from that as fast as we can and move to an XML editing software.
So that's because the XML tagging in the Word document is really, the belief is that you can do it right. Okay. Whereas, the reality with our product is actually completely quite the opposite.
Okay.
You can give it to an author and you can begin to see XML. Once again, you have to make it a benefit to the author. Don't ask them, hey, I want you to tag files. The files are going to be tagged, hey, as you make your draft. Or before you submit it, the files are going to be automatically tagged. That's the way that we do it.
So you're not just talking about cut and paste here, right? This is going way beyond that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hear questions about this, and people are going to say, well, we already have Word templates. We're good. And what you're telling us is that what kind of the requirements to start with this? I mean, what does the author have to follow?
So we don't actually we try not to impose new requirements as you're bringing an XML workflow. So if you already have templates in your organization, or if you have your style guides, we would simply like your authors to follow those style guides. As long as you're doing book publishing, things can be easily mapped to your XML and to your schema, without the people, knowing the whole
Okay, so Pradeep, so I'm interested in pursuing this author-friendly or user-friendly XML. What would I do next?
Okay. So if you're a book publisher and you find it interesting, I would really say that the proof is in the pudding. So
Yeah.
you really got to try this as a proof of concept. What does the proof of concept mean to you, to your authors and editors and your service providers? We can talk to you about that.
Okay. Well, everyone, thanks so much for joining us. We hope you found this informative. If you're interested, feel free to reach out via the comments below, or of course through our website. We hope you found something interesting and learned a little bit. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.